Quite often in programming, you will need to repeatedly execute some kind of code or even iterate over various things. And this is where loops come in. We'll first start off with while loops. A while loop in Python repeatedly executes a block of statements as long as a condition is true. It's particularly useful when you're not sure how many times you'll need to iterate. Let's start off with a basic while loop. And with this while loop, we want to count up from 0 to 4. So let's create a variable, which is going to be our count, which is going to keep track of our count. And we'll use the while statement. So while the count is less than 5, so while this value is less than 5, which is true, we want to print counting up and the count. Then we want to increment that count by 1 each time. So when we run this, we get a small misspelling here. We get counting up 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, without the 5. So as long as the condition is less than 5, it executes this fragment of code and increments this count value by 1. So we incremented by 1, the count value was 1, we printed 1, incremented by 1, then the count was 2, and so on until it was 4. Once we incremented by 1 more and it was 5, this condition was no longer true, and this basically stopped being executed. You can also use while loops to process items in a list. So let's try to create a list of tasks and we'll iterate over each task, printing them out. So let's start off with creating a list called tasks. And we're going to put some tasks such as wash the car, then write the report, then pay bills, then post on social media. Now, we use our while statement and we'll do while tasks. So basically, this means while we have tasks in our task list, then we want to do something. So we'll take a task from the task list by popping it out. So we'll pop out the first task from the list, removing it from the list and assigning it to the current task. And then we'll print handling task, and then what task we want to handle, which is the current task. So when we click play, we see that we printed out each of the tasks. And as long as there is a task within the task list, then it will iterate through and print that information out. And once we run out of tasks from the task list, we'll see that the tasks are empty. Then it will stop iterating and stop executing. Sometimes you may want to exit a while loop ahead of time. So the break statement allows you to exit the loop regardless of the loop's condition. So let's create a small snippet of code that tries to quote unquote guess the magic number. So we'll set the magic number to be 7, and our guess will start from 0. So we'll have our while loop, which is true, meaning as long as the condition is true, and in this case it's always going to be true, it will always execute the code that is going to be under this while loop. So we'll do guess plus equals 1 we'll increment the value of the guess by 1, and then we'll check if the guess is equal to the magic number. Then we'll print you guessed the magic number. And then once we have guessed the magic number, we want to break. So when we run this, we see that it guessed the magic number, but why don't we also print is the number, and then guess. And when we click play, then we have, it first has the number 1. It checks if the guess number is equal to the magic number. And since it's not, then we start over. We increase the guess number by 1, then the number is 2. We check if the guess magic number is equal to 2. If not, then we repeat that process, increment, and we keep repeating that process until we finally get the number 7. And then once it is equal to 7, then we enter this if statement here. And since the magic number is 7, then we use the break. Now the break statement breaks this while loop, and we exit it, no longer executing it anymore. If this break was deleted from here, then we would basically be printing in an infinite loop. And this is something I highly do not recommend, because this could potentially break your code, especially if you implement this in production, in your production code. This kind of endless while loops can break your code. So this is something that's very important to look out for, and using these break statements is a safe way to exit these while loops. You can also use while loops with continue statements. The continue statement skips the current iteration and proceeds to the next iteration of the loop. So let's write a fragment of code that prints odd numbers. So let's start off with our number, which starts off with 0. Then we have our while loop condition, and that as long as the number is less than 10, we will then increment the number by 1, and then we will check if the number is divisible by 2, if you could divide it by 2, and if when you divide it by 2 that the remainder is 0. And then if it is, then we continue. And if it's not, then we print odd number and the number. And so when we print this, we get it's printing only the odd numbers. So basically what happens here is that as long as the number is less than 10, then we will continue to enter this while block of code. We increment the code by 1, and then we check if the number is divisible by 2. If it's divisible by 2, then of course it's an even number, and we continue. And what the continue statement does is that it stops the code here, and it does not continue to the next line. And instead of continuing to the next line, it starts from the next iteration. So basically it skips over the rest of the code that's under here and goes to the next iteration. In Python, we also have for loops. A for loop iterates over a sequence, so a list, tuple, or string, and executes a block of code for each item in that sequence. It's especially handy when you know beforehand how many times the loop should run. So, for example, let's write a code that iterates over a list of colors. So we create our list of colors, which is going to have red, blue, and green. And then we create our for loop, which is going to be for color in colors. So basically, it takes one item from this list of colors, and that one item we're going to call color. And then for each color, we're going to print out the color is color. And when we run this, we print out the color red, blue, and green. So basically, once again, we iterate over this colors list, and for each color in the colors list, we print out the color. For loops can be used to iterate through each character in a string. So let's iterate over just a simple word. So we have our word, and it's going to be hello. And so for letter in word, we're going to print the letter. And once we click play, we print each character in that word. You can also loop over dictionaries, but to do that, you can iterate over its keys, values, or key value pairs. So let's start off with having a dictionary of our pets. So we're going to have a pet dictionary with ages, and we're going to create our cat, which is 2 years old. We have a dog, which is 5, and we have a bird, which is 3. Now, we could iterate over these, over the key value pairs using the items method. So for pet, comma, age in pet ages dot items. So items is going to give us a list of key pair values where the key is going to be the pet and the value is going to be the age. So here our key is going to be cat and our value is going to be 2. And so for each pair, we're going to print, and we're going to do off F string formatting. So we'll do F, the pet is age years old. And when we click play, we get the cat is 2 years old, the dog is 5 years old, and the bird is 3 years old. Quite often, the range function is often used for loops when you need to perform an action a certain number of times. So let's create a simple for loop. So for num and range 1 to 6. So basically, let me fix this. We want code. So range function basically creates a list of numbers that starts from 1 and stops at 6, meaning it ends at 5. So it's going to be 1 through 5. And so for this list of numbers, we're just going to print number space and then num. And once we click play, it prints out the numbers 1 through 5. For loops can be nested within one another to handle multi-dimensional data as well. So let's create a matrix for ourselves here. And this matrix is going to be a list of lists, basically. And this is going to have the first list containing 1, 2, 3. The second list 4, 5, 6, and the third list 7, 8, 9. So we have our matrix, and now we're going to have a for loop within a for loop. So for row in matrix, so we're going to take each row one by one. Then we're going to take for number in row, so then taking each number for each row, we're going to print num and then end equals with a space. And then print. And then we hit play. And it prints out our matrix. So basically, we take the first row, and then in the second for loop, we then use that first row, and then each number in that row, and then we print out that number. And for that row, we print out the number, but the ending, we do not want to create a new line. So instead, we made that the end is a space instead of a new line. But once we finished the first row, then we moved on to this section, and we printed a new line. So once this section of code has been finished and went through this loop, then it goes into the first loop. So then we continue on with this one. We can also use the break statement to stop the loop before it has looped through all its items as well in the for loop. So we could create a simple loop here that for num in range 1 through 10, but technically 9, if the num equals 4, then we break. Else, we will print the num. So when we run this, it goes 1, 2, 3, and once we get to num 4, it breaks, and we exit out of this loop. We can also use the continue statement, which skips the current iteration and proceeds to the next one. So once again, we could create another simple loop for num in range 1 through 10. If the num is divisible by 2, which equals 0, then we continue. Else, we will print the num. And once we click play, we get the odd numbers. Sometimes you might need the index of the current item in the loop. You can use the enumerate function to help you with this. So let's create a small loop that loops over a list of heroes. So we have our heroes, which is going to be Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Just need to fix those quotes. Now, we have our for loop, and we can have index and hero. So we're going to have an index for each hero. And using the enumerate function, we're going to enumerate our list of heroes. So basically what enumerate is going to do is it's going to provide us a hero and that index. So for the first item, Superman is going to have an index of 0. Batman's going to have an index of 1. Wonder Woman, index of 2. Now, we could print the heroes. So we're using f string with hero and the number of the hero. Here we want to not start from 0, but start from 1 instead. So the index is going to be +1. Double dot, and then our hero. And so when we run this, You get Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Hero 1, 2, and 3. Become a member at AILearningHub.io and get access to personalized mentor guidance, early access to AI resources, help with AI projects, and a great learning community.